Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Solving Reimbursement Challenges and Scaling RCM Without Hiring. Is AI the Answer? I'm Claire Wallace with Beckers Healthcare. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we begin today's webinar, I will go over a few quick housekeeping details. First, we will begin today's webinar with a presentation and we'll have time at the end of the hour for a question and answer session. You can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar by typing them into the Q&A box you see on your screen right now. Today's session is being recorded and will be available after the event. You can use the same link that you used to log into today's webinar to access the recording. There will be a few interactive polls throughout the webinar. The questions and responses will pop up on your console for you to select. If at any time you have trouble with the audio or slides, try refreshing your browser. You can also submit any technical questions into the Q&A box, and we're here to help at any time. With that, we are thrilled to be joined today by Dan Parsons, the co-founder and chief product officer of Thoughtful AI. Dan, thank you so much for being here today. I will turn the floor over to you to go ahead and kick things off.
Thanks, Claire. I really appreciate the introduction. Thanks everyone for attending. On behalf of Thoughtful AI, we're very grateful to have the opportunity to speak a little bit about some of the positive outcomes that we're seeing and evangelize a lot of the success that our customers are having, and also be a resource for you as you look to explore new technologies on behalf of your organizations. So to kick things off, I want to run over the agenda briefly. We'll start off with the objectives in the background. So we'll double click into some of the problem statements that we're going to be looking at, primarily focusing on a lot of the staffing issues that you all are experiencing, understanding how those have a systemic impact on your ability to run an effective revenue cycle and some of the reimbursement issues that you're experiencing. We'll introduce you to what's the concept of a fully human capable AI agent, and what that looks like in practice and what that looks like in our implementation and how our customers are utilizing that. We'll talk about the advantages. We'll feature some high ROI use cases and places for you to start as you look and to go on this journey. We'll navigate the AI implementation landscape. So we'll walk you through on some of the things you should be considering as you look to pick a vendor or a partner in this journey. We'll talk about some of the do's and don'ts during the process, some of the red flags and some of the areas that you should really lean into. Front and foremost, we'll talk about maintaining trust and security. That is very important, especially as we look to some of these major technology changes. And then we'll do some closing remarks and Q&A. I do want to call out that we have some polls throughout the conversation today. I'll also be doing intermittent Q&A. So please feel free, if you have questions that come up throughout the presentation, we'd love for you to drop those in the Q&A box. And I'll be sure to get to those questions as we work through the agenda. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump in. So we're going to start with identifying some of the key trends that we're seeing in staffing challenges across RCM. And this actually applies broadly to healthcare administration in general. What we're doing in our research is we go and we try and size up at a macro level, and then we also talk to customers and prospects and people on the field and really see what this looks like on the front lines. So at a macro level, we're seeing $60 billion is spent on healthcare admin, and that is just a portion that's allocated on the provider side. That's not even the entire industry. So the entire industry is spending $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion across administration. And that's not helping patients. That's just moving paper around and keeping these businesses operational. One number that's really interesting to us is that's increased $18 billion since 2021. So just the velocity with which that cost is continuing to creep up is very concerning. And I think a lot of that you guys will have experienced as you look to understand what your margins look like as a business, your profitability. You'll see that these administration costs are just becoming very, very hard to manage and keep control over. If we take it down to even just the claim level, claim submission costs alone rose by 83% here over the past 2 years. And that's just from the amount of people and systems required to get a claim, all the way from service to collection and reconciled and posted. So a lot of these are where we spend a lot of time, figuring out how we can help organizations tackle these challenges. So likely what you are seeing, this is showing up by way of staff being overworked. So we notice that there is insurmountable turnover in the industry. RCM, for some reason, is an order of magnitude more challenged as it relates to maintaining staff. So at best case, RCM, teams on averages are seeing 3 to 4x the average of other industries. At worst case, we're seeing organizations with, over 10x the turnover rates. So what that does is it puts a lot of pressure on the remaining staff. And that introduces a bunch of complexity, extremely high error rates due to overwork and burnout. And another macro trend that we're looking at is that the talent pool for these administration roles are only decreasing. So the folks who actually want to go in and people going out to try and hire for these roles, that talent pool is smaller than it's ever been, and that's going to continue to be the case. So backfilling is expensive. By the time you recruit and train and onboard and get someone productive, your fully burdened cost over the first year or two is almost 200% of the annual salary. And that ultimately is impacting the patient. So 80% of healthcare professionals acknowledge a decline in patient experience due to labor shortages. And the great news is, that's what we're here to talk about today, is there's a lot of ways that we can use innovation and technology to address these problems head on. Let's talk about some challenges now on the other side of the coin. So we're often looking at how do we run a more effective revenue cycle for our customers, and how can we improve some of these key metrics around reimbursement. One thing that we are seeing is denial rates are increasing 10% year over year. If your organization has an over 10% denial rate blended across all of your claims, you should consider yourself in the danger zone. And what that means is it's having such a material impact on your margins that it's really making it difficult for you to run a profitable organization, and therefore continue to invest in the areas needed to stay competitive and needed to deliver top quality care. So one place to look is denied claims. That adds $118 per claim directly to your overhead. An aggregate, that's $8.6 billion a year. And, again, that just is going into this margin contraction story that we're seeing customers with. So if you look at this visual here on the left, if at the point of service, you have your fully potential for profit margin, every step of the way that is required for people or systems to touch, either that patient experience or that claim all the way through the funnel, that consistently is chipping away at your margins. So as an organization, you should really be looking at this revenue cycle and say, hey, where can I strip cost out of this system? Where can I strip inefficiencies out of the system? Where can I strip rework out of the system? And really where we see some of the top causes are just issues across, everything on the front end, from patient intake to authorization and eligibility, anything from code inaccuracies or syntax errors, incorrect modifiers in the systems, failure to get claims out the door on time, inaccurate patient information, and generally just not having enough staff to stay on top of this is ultimately what results in this margin squeeze. So this brings up the point that these are not mutually exclusive problems. You should not be trying to solve one of these. These problems come hand in hand. So staffing and reimbursement challenges should be addressed together, because what typically happens is you'll gain an increased backlog and work on your team. Therefore, your current team that's already turning over is having trouble and challenges keeping up. That introduces more error and more complexity and more fragmentation into your revenue cycle, and ultimately then you start to see longer collection times, you start to see increased denial rates, and the like. So we want to kind of size up the problem, try and get you guys to identify with maybe some of these areas of particular interest inside your organization. And I'd love to jump into a poll here just to see how you guys are thinking about it. Would love to learn from you all. What's the biggest challenge in your revenue cycle management to date? So if you had to take a look at staffing shortages and high turnover, if you had to look at maybe some of the reimbursement delay and denial challenges, or just general inefficiencies or siloed teams in the organization, or all of the above, would love to see how you guys are thinking about that. And while we do that, I'll jump into the Q&A. Let's see. Here's one. What are the key reasons behind the increasing denial rates and reimbursement, and how does this affect healthcare providers? So I touched on a bunch of the key reasons for that increase. A lot of it just comes down to, especially as you scale up and your volumes start to increase, a lot of it comes down to data consistency and data integrity. So, if we think about, what claims get paid, it's the ones that have this perfect data package that gets sent off to the payer. And, when you've got a lot of touch points across this revenue cycle journey, and if you've got a lot of people, especially, if they're overworked and they're trying to do very high volumes of this work, that inherently introduces a lot of issues. So a lot of the stuff is just the basics. It's just the basics of blocking and tackling. But the systemic issue is that lack of capacity. All right, we'll give it a couple more seconds here. They told me to wait a minute to make sure everyone was able to submit answers. All right, this looks pretty good. We got about 50 submissions here. All right, so all of the above is half, and then starts with staffing and works its way down. Yeah, and this is what we see. This isn't new, and fortunately, let's talk about some solutions here. So why we're all here? The question that is in the headlines these days is AI the answer? I'm here to say yes, AI is an answer. And it's a starting point, and it can be a very complete answer for you and your organization. But before we talk about how it works, let's talk a little about the outcomes that we're seeing with our customers, and let's orient around these outcomes as we think about implementation strategies. So staffing, we are typically working with healthcare leadership, and we're trying to figure out, one, how do we add more capacity? And this is mainly for growing organizations. How do we add more capacity without adding headcount? So as revenue goes up, if you keep costs flat, or if we can even reduce costs, let's figure out how to reduce our payroll operating overhead by 80% as it relates to the cost of administration. So other things we're looking at is infinite scalability. So how can we put a cost structure in place that doesn't have to scale linearly as the business continues to grow? And then let's also look at, we have great talent inside of these organizations, but they do not like the work that they are doing. So how do we get our top talent focused on more fulfilling work? How do we improve our employee engagement surveys? How do we become a stronger culture? How do we get out of this always playing catch-up mentality? So we tend to orient around that. Then we look at the other side of the coin with reimbursement. We say, hey, what are the core KPIs that we really need to focus on? A lot of times there's some sort of DSO metric, so improving our cash cycles. We've been able to cut some cash cycles by as much as half, if not better, depending on the specialty and the situation. How do we get way more data transparency? How do we give these executives and give these boardrooms and give these leaders, even functional leaders, the ability to really measure the impact that some of these initiatives are having? So how do we unlock unlimited data transparency and reporting? And then how do we get to the crux of this, which is, let's just reduce denials. Let's collect the money that we're owed. Let's reduce the cost of having to rework claims, and let's really focus on some of these key drivers. So these are the outcomes that we typically align with going into any implementation. So we start with the outcomes and we work backwards. So now let's talk about, how do we achieve those outcomes? Well, what is an AI agent? That is the method that we use to tackle these problems in RCM. So an AI agent is effectively a fully human capable software robot. So it mimics human behavior. It can enhance healthcare RCM efficiency across all aspects. Really anything that's being done or performed inside of a technology stack or a software system, we should be able to train an AI agent to do 90% of that work. They work tirelessly, so they can work 10x capacity. So they can process very large data sets, and they can work through lots of systems at exceptional accuracy. And they can also, replicate themselves. So for example, if you have one role, if you think about, and then if there's 3 of them working at the same time, you would ultimately 3 extra capacity, but you'd also 3 extra speed. And then, what we are seeing is that they're revolutionizing how healthcare companies think about approaching RCM. Just due to a lot of the early proof points that companies see, we typically see them, 3x, 4x, even 10xing their investment in the space, just because it's such a reliable strategy. So if we stack rank this against some of the other strategies that that organizations are looking at, we have our fully human capable AI agents. Other strategies are we continue to add in-house staff, or we go look to outsource this. And I can tell you from experience, if you're looking to outsource it, they are having the same challenges you are from a staffing perspective. So if you're struggling and you think just going to an outsourced provider to solve this problem is your answer, just know that they are struggling with this, and ultimately that's impacting the ability for them to keep up and for them to maintain quality as well. So what are some of the vectors that we look at revenue cycle teams actually even assessing their own effectiveness? We take those same vectors and we apply those across our AI agents. So we look at training efficiency. How quickly can we get an AI agent to be productive? So we can, we have proof. We can train an AI agent to become productive faster than a human. The volume of tasks, they can do 10x, if not more, the volume of tasks. Accuracy, they do exactly what they're trained to do every single time. So they have perfect precision inside of your systems. Work coverage, they work around the clock. AI agents, they don't get sick, they don't take vacation, they don't go home on nights and weekends. And the speed, again, is unrivaled. They can move as fast as the systems will allow them to, and if that's not fast enough, they can replicate themselves, so they can do a lot of work in tandem. And then the cost. One of the major benefits is how cost scales with AI agents. So at least with our pricing model. So for example, if you have to hire one payment poster, the more volume you get as your business scales, you are then hiring 2, 3, 4 incremental heads. The best part about an AI agent is you hire one to perform this payment posting duty, it can do infinite amounts of volume. So your unit economics as an organization actually gets significantly better as you scale. So that is where we start to see some material impacts to profit margins. And then adaptability to change. So not only do they remember everything that you've trained them, but you can train them to do infinite number of tasks. So as you add more and more training and more to their workload, there's no regression. It's just they just continuously and seamlessly expand the scope of work. Let's talk about some of the applicable use cases that we see. So claims processing is a good example. We have a bunch of customers that we're currently have AI agents performing this work. So typical, user, they go update the appointment details, billing team reviews the services manually. Is there any documentation attached? Do they need signatures? Is all the data in the right place? Then we submit the claim. Does the claim does it even go out the door clean, or is it rejected at the clearinghouse? It requires a human to touch every single one. If there's missing documentation, it requires a human to go to a bunch of different systems and chase that down. So all this complexity, and when you're doing this across, tens or hundreds of thousands of claims in a short period of time, that introduces denials. So with an AI agent, we simply just train it up on all of those core workflows. We have a learning rules engine, which allows it to handle and understand exceptions and figure out how to expand the scope and learn. And then we also use some foundational large language models, which actually give it some true intelligence, and it can sense make of unstructured data, and it can make some of these decisions. And we can get to 90-100% of these workflows with needing zero human intervention. Let's take a look at another one. So payment posting, this is a little more complex use case, but we're doing a lot of this right now. So, as a user, you might get an 835 file. You might actually get files in a bunch of different formats. You're matching it to the bank deposit. Is there a matching deposit? Let's go look at the claim information. We can open up the ERAs. Is there a match? So again, just a lot of nuance and a lot of data and a lot of different formats touching a bunch of different systems. So there's a bunch of complexity here. And we know that this is a big bottleneck for a lot of healthcare organizations. So again, same approach. We train up the AI agent to perform, all of these core workflows. We have a learning rules engine, so it can continue to expand its knowledge and its scope, and we use these foundational models. to be able to, sense make of a lot of the data, make some of these calls. And if stuff is required for human intervention, we can very easily organize that and put that in a place so humans don't have to go do investigative research just to figure out what the problems are. We can do a lot of that front-loading work as part of the core process. So again, taking very complex, very manual, high-touch scenarios and getting a lot of the human complexity out of the way. And that ultimately reduces cost. All right, let's jump into another poll question. So now we've kind of talked a little bit about some of these use cases. We'd be curious, which of the following benefits of AI agents in RCM is most appealing to you? So across some of these areas, is it more around the reducing staffing costs, improve employee satisfaction? Is it tied to reduction in denials, improved cash flow? Maybe is it eliminating some of these billing errors and streamlining your workflows, or all of the above? Would love to learn, based on what you've heard and maybe some other research you've done, what's of most interest to you all. And again, while we do this, I will grab some Q&A. All right, here's a good one. I'll talk about security later, so I'm not going to take that one right now. What advice would you give healthcare providers aiming to stay ahead in the rapidly changing landscape of healthcare technology, particularly in terms of embracing innovation and maximizing the benefits of AI-driven solutions? So basically, what advice would I give providers who are looking to stay ahead from a research perspective? There is a lot of now new white papers and things being published, so I would definitely do that. But I would also encourage you just to go talk to different folks, different vendors that are working on this. So go actually look at what those solutions are. I would do some demos out in the field. I would really have your problem statements really well articulated and well crafted. I think going up and knowing what problem you're trying to solve will really help you understand, what problems or what solution space you should be in. So really doing a little bit of the homework on the front end, identifying what the problems are, identifying what the outcomes are that you're really looking for, but then, just getting out there and doing some research and talking to some folks. I mean, certainly you could talk to us. We'd be happy to have those conversations. But really, looking at people that are working in different parts of the stack. Here's one. How do you help health systems understand the difference between AI, machine learning, predictive analytics? There seems to be so much labeled as AI that truly is not. That is a great question. So, again, most of these healthcare systems, we try and stay out of the technology conversation. Obviously, when we go to IT audits and things like that, we really talk about it, but we really want healthcare systems to anchor around the outcomes that they are looking at, and then we apply the technology that is most effective. Most of what can be done, you don't necessarily need, large machine learning models to solve a lot of these problems. If you want to move into maybe some of the more predictive analytics and you want to, take a look at, claims that are coming through and have some sort of predictive modelings, then sure, you'll definitely need, some machine learning and maybe some of these more progressive or heavy-handed technologies. So a lot of it comes down to, when we work with our healthcare providers, really orienting around, hey, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And then we can apply the most effective technology. And that can be anything from just a lot of system automation that doesn't necessarily need, a ton of like true AI. But then, we are seeing a lot of use cases that we are working on where, we do want to use some of the more powerful foundational models to bring to life some of the true decision making, some cognitive reasoning, and some of those types of things. So in that case, then we're a little bit more on the bleeding edge of using some of the deeper technologies. All right, we got a bunch of submissions in. Let's go ahead and see the results. All the above. Once again, significant reduction in denials and improved cash flow. Yeah, denials management continues to be a problem. Eliminating billing errors. Yeah. So again, this is all consistent, and the good news is is, this is what we spend time every single day just working on these problems, and we're seeing some pretty powerful outcomes. All right, so let's talk about what's next. All right, we all agree that, hey, we have these problems. We all understand, yes, there's a lot of AI solutions and interesting things that are out there. So these are some of the things that we advise, and as we help our prospects work through our buying journey of engaging with us, we really like to help educate them. Hey, not only this is what our differentiators, but this is what you should be sense making of when you go to the market. So some must-haves are seamless integration, and that's not actual like system-to-system integration necessarily. While that might be important, it's more seamless organizational integration. So you want to make this as painless and as frictionless as possible as you introduce an automation strategy into your organization. Therefore, you also have to have a very tailored approach. So this needs to be something that's very unique. So if you're working with someone and they're not asking questions about how you specifically do things, understanding what is your patient mix, understanding what is your payer mix, understanding what services are you offering, what is your specialty, what are the heartbeats of your business, then you likely aren't going to get the highest ROI. And then you got to have an expert team, not only a team of technologists, but also a team of healthcare professionals. So those are the must-haves. Kind of consider those the non-negotiables. As we peel the onion back and we go one step deeper, get beyond the basics, let's talk a little about what that means. So one, you got to have comprehensive coverage on RCM. Both of these problems are anchored in revenue cycle. So if you want to have a really material impact on your collections and on the reimbursements and denial rates, it all starts inside of the walls of the RCM processes. Future proofing. So most of our customers, not all of them, they all have big ambitions. They want to continue to grow. They don't want to have to revisit this conversation, in the coming years. They want to make sure that whatever strategy they pick now is one that they can continue to double down on year over year. So you got to make sure that it's scalability, it can outlast the time of technology changes and evolutions. It needs to be a decade plus, 20-year plus strategy. It's got to streamline operations and even help with vendor consolidation, not make your stack more complex. So whatever you're doing, if it's asking you to go add more things to your systems mix, I would raise a red flag and really take a hard look at and ask those questions why. They got to have great communication. They got to be able to put the numbers in front of you that show there's fast time to value, that you'll see ROI, inside of a matter of months, not necessarily inside of a matter of years. It's got to come with all the train and maintain and maintenance support, everything along with making sure that this is an enterprise-ready solution that's going to go the distance. And then compliance and security, just make sure they've got all the standards, the standard certs and compliance checks. So let's do one more poll here. So if you guys I'm sure you guys are on different, points in this journey, but when selecting an automation vendor, which factors are most important to you? Just curious as to where do you feel like you are most capable, and what are you looking for your vendors to bring? Are you most concerned about the integration component with the organization or systems? Do you need them to be extremely custom? Do you want them to have healthcare expertise? And then, compliance and industry regulations. And then is this a very cost-focused decision and discovery that you're going through? All right, I'll take another question while we wait for the results. In your experience, what are the most common misconceptions or barriers that healthcare providers face when adopting AI technologies, and how can these challenges be addressed? The most common misconception, and this is just because we've had to clean up some messes, is that quality is created equal. So I think we get a lot of people that think if I just go buy RPA or I go get a vendor to come automate, some of my click flows, that then I will get these significant outcomes as a business. And, what we have found is and we've invested millions of dollars into making this be very viable and effective and fast, but it's really, really hard to do. So I think, the biggest misconception is that it's a box to check and that it's not, you don't need a true partner over the long term. It's someone that really understands, your business, understands, RCM, understands healthcare. So, I would just be wary when you're going and you're talking to folks. All solutions are not created equal, even though people might say that they do similar things. So I would just make sure you spend, a little bit of time doing your diligence. All right. Again, about a 50. All right, so for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and take a look. All right, seamless integrations, customization options, and cost effectiveness tend to be kind of about weighted equally, which makes a lot of sense. So yeah, those are all things that you need to be looking at. One, we play in the specialty space primarily, so we focus on mid-market and mid-enterprise, so scaled organizations, but we're not in the hospital space. So we work with a lot of different specialties. They all have a lot of niche systems. So making sure that whoever you're working with knows your system and can operate your system effectively, I mean, that's pretty fundamental in success. Customizable options, as we spoke about, it's really important that someone brings a solution that's tailor-made to your organization, to your challenges, and to your desired outcomes. And then cost effectiveness, the main point of technology is to unlock efficiency at a order of magnitude. So you got to make sure that you're seeing ROI and you're seeing it fast. All right, some implementation pitfalls to avoid. So there is no one-size-fits-all solution. So your organization, as we've spoken about before, it operates differently. So if you are having to change how you do things too much, that doesn't feel natural, then I would raise the red flag. Don't adopt a point solution. So if someone is just going after one part and they're not a comprehensive strategy, similarly to as you think about a staffing strategy, if they like start and end at a certain point, you are again just adding another system that you need to maintain and you got to train people on and you got to get users in. So I would avoid any specific point solution. Automation or RPA consulting groups. So nothing in consulting groups. There's a lot of great groups out there, and we even partner with some of them. However, with this level of implementation, you really want to make sure the technology stack is something that is native to your problem. So there are a lot of just like RPA tools that you can do, low code, point click type of things, which we'll talk about below. And there's a lot of consulting groups that just will resell you those licenses and stand up those types of implementations. You are going to get significantly less value in that sort of engagement. Limited healthcare and RCM expertise. We've spent years just steeping ourselves in the problem space here. You owe yourself that you should go find a partner who can really empathize and who has data to support where a lot of your problems are coming from. Legacy UI only automation or low code solutions. Again, if you want to try to stand this up and use a solution to do yourself, we've cleaned up a lot of messes from that approach. It's a full-blown technology capability to be able to do this. We work with partners who they typically don't have a ton of interest in taking this on. They want to focus on patient outcomes, and then lack of best-in-class support. What good is an employee if they don't show up to work? So what good is an AI agent if he doesn't show up to do his job every single day, and you can't have 100% reliability? So, again, these are some of the things to avoid, some of the questions to be asking as you're out in the market. And then lastly is security. I mean, we all know of some of the breaches and vulnerabilities, that are going on out there in the industry. So why maintaining trust and security is really important for us. One, obviously everything that comes along with patient privacy. We believe because these are long-term relationships, we believe these are decade or multi-decade relationships. Trust is at the very forefront. And a lot of that comes down with, Can you trust your partner to be, in and around your systems and your data? So you got to make sure that they have the proper certifications, the proper security posture, proper infrastructure in order to support that, and there's no exposure. And then just avoiding regulatory headaches. So any sort of audits or things that come down the line, you don't want a partner to make that more painful for you. So there's a ton of benefits, but there's also some risks if you don't work with the right infrastructure and the right teams. So lastly, how we maintain trust and security. We're fully HIPAA compliant. We stay on top of this stuff religiously. We're SOC 2 Type 2 compliance. We evaluate our information security at every single touch point. So across infrastructure, across our team, not just our AI agents, but actually all the underlying software and tooling and things that we develop in-house that allow us to deliver such a high quality service. All of that is wrapped around a full layer and audible version of security. So we do believe that this is fundamental in whoever you guys work with. So lastly, I want to thank you all for hanging out with me for a little bit. We would love to start conversations. If anything here was interesting and you want to learn more, or you want to pick up where we're leaving off here, my co-founder Alex and I would be happy to have conversations. You can reach out to me directly. You can also go to our website. We've got a lot of good information, and we're pumping out content on this stuff, every single day. So would welcome you guys to go check out and learn what you can, and look to us as a resource as you guys begin this journey. Thank you so much. And with that, I'll pass it off to Claire.
Thank you, Dan, for a great presentation today. That was awesome. We're now going to go ahead and begin today's question and answer session. So as a reminder, you can submit any questions you have by typing them into the Q&A box on your webinar console. So let's go ahead and get started with our first audience question. So first of all, someone wants to know, how do traditional recruitment and retention strategies fall short in addressing staffing challenges, especially in a limited labor pool?
Well, the challenge is the labor pool. So recruiting strategies rely on the fact that there's a talent pool to recruit into. So I think what we find is, if you're trying to cut corners and just putting people in seats, there's a lot of risk with that. Again, the vulnerability that just was with Change Healthcare, that was done, through a user endpoint. So, it starts with quality of who you have in your organization. So as the talent pool, continues to shrink, that puts more pressure on your recruiting function. And if you bring people in then who aren't up to the skill set, then that puts pressure on your training function and retraining. And then if those people aren't happy because it's not a place that they want to be, then then the cycle starts all over with attrition. So I'd say those are a lot of the challenges that we see. And we look to use, AI agents and some of our solutions to really augment those teams. So you can actually go out now and you're focusing your recruiting efforts in the high demand, high fulfilling roles where there is, a surplus of talent. So you're getting, a bigger return on investment on those efforts.
Yeah. So our next question from the audience is, could you provide a simple explanation of what a fully human-capable AI agent is?
Sure. We had a slide on that earlier in the deck. Yeah, really what we look to do is when we go in is we say, hey, where do you have a lot of people operating software, and what full workflows, what full roles are we able to automate? And so how we define a fully human capable AI agent is just someone that can go in and operate a whole job. They can interoperate with any system that human is coming into. They can use any of the data that's in their world to make decisions and move things forward. And ultimately, they're able to get people out of those seats. Because if a computer can do it, then a human probably shouldn't be doing it. We should put humans per our mission statement on more important tasks. So that's our goal. We go in and we try and optimize around full end-to-end roles.
So how does thoughtful AI prioritize data security and regulatory compliance? and what measures are in place to ensure healthcare providers can trust the technology to protect sensitive information?
Sure. So I can jump back a slide. So we get third-party audits done regularly. We're constantly doing, penetration tests. We're constantly getting all of our systems, all of our procedures, all of our organizational, infrastructure, all that stuff gets audited by a third party to show that, that we are best in class from a security posture. And on top of that, we come as a leadership team. We have a deep background in enterprise security as well. So, we've got, decades of experience across the board in those types of initiatives.
Awesome. So can the AI facilitate surgical procedural documentation and coding?
We'd have to double click on that use case, but yeah, we can facilitate a lot of documentation. We aren't to the point now where we can fully autonomously do all medical coding. We're investing in that area. But we can do a lot of auditing. We can do a lot of sense making of documents. We can do a lot of structuring of unstructured data. So there's a lot that we could potentially do in that arena.
Awesome. Well, I believe that's all the time that we have for today, unfortunately, but I would like to thank Dan for a fantastic presentation and Thoughtful AI for sponsoring today's webinar. To learn more about the content presented today, please check out the resources section on your webinar console and fill out the webinar survey on your console. Thank you again for joining us today, and we hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.